Hopefully you understand me. If not, you might be as confused as these guys are. Yeah, so a lot of misunderstandings leads to a lot of craziness in this one. But what is it really about? Let's see if IMDb can help us understand. Stranded in rural Italy without transportation or language skills, an American couple on the verge of adopting tries to reconnect during a disastrous vacation, as their fears and relationship problems threaten to boil over. Okay. I guess that helps understand a little bit, but I will be here to hopefully fill in some more for you guys. All right, so this is a new film just released out on digital. Like, might be on Amazon now. I think you still have to rent it, but it is one that didn't know a lot about. I kind of shared it through Promote, got a press release for it, and shared it, and really wasn't. You look at the cover, the poster there, and you kind of see that okay, it's a couple and so forth, and at first glance you're kind of like, okay, whatever, is this really horror or not? And I kind of did have to kind of like peek, because I do get sent some other stuff that's not really horror, and sometimes I have to give it a second glance to make sure that I'm sharing the right thing. But then I noticed, they have some knives in their hand and so forth. So okay, so I kind of read a little bit, and then you look a little bit closer, and it looks like there's a body on the floor, and like, okay, so maybe this is horror. But at first glance, and with the title, I was like, oh, is it? And so I wasn't really sure, but I figured it out, posted the information for it, but didn't really gather that, okay, this is one, I got to really see this or not. But then, I kind of, scrolling through and whatever, I was kind of like, okay, maybe I'll give this a shot, and see what happens here. So, since it's new, I will try to keep it spoiler free. I guess, I don't know that there are I guess there is twists and turns to it a little bit, but I guess it's more of what happens. So, it's not that I'm giving away a huge secret here, but I guess I'll kind of mention a little bit of what, is going to happen, or why. I guess, it's hard to kind of say, but I don't think it really spoils anything, but just kind of tells you the direction, or it's probably going to give you the reason as a horror fan to watch the movie. Because, I know it's only been out not too long now, but, it doesn't look like it's got a whole bunch of ratings here on IMDb. So I'm not sure, it's got a huge, push. And it might be because, it doesn't, stand out, like I said, and to see it as a horror film. But it is. And then I'll explain more of that, as I tell you what's going on here, so you can see why it is horror, and why you may or may not want to see it. But I will try to kind of leave something for you guys, not totally ruin it for you. But like I said, it's not like there's some big secret or whatever that's happening here that I'm going to reveal. So yeah, it does start off, and you're going to have to give it a little bit of patience. And I know I've complained in some other reviews, that when a movie takes, X amount of time, getting to the horror of it, sometimes that bothers me. And it definitely hit off in this one. It definitely hit with me. Am I really watching a horror movie or not? Where is the horror in this film? It's not going to come at you right away. You are going to have to sit through it. I really wasn't paying attention at the time, so I don't know how long it took before we really got to the horror portion of it. But I definitely was, you watch the beginning of this film and until that point, and definitely, if you're like me and a horror fan, you get, you start getting a little anxious. Where is the horror? I want to see the horror. Where, what is it? What is it, the horror that's happening here? And it doesn't always need to be, like a dead body or anything like that. But, you have to see the mystery of it. You have to see, what is going on, and is there, something out there, where, is it a ghost? Is it, a monster? Is it, what, is there, what is happening here that's going to bring it into the horror realm? And this one, really, early on and through a decent portion early, it's not going to give you much of a hint of anything like that. It is very focused on getting to know that this couple is a gay couple, and in getting to know them and what they want. And we get an introduction to them and see, at first, it seems like, all good is with them. They're at a strong point in their relationship, but then, as it kind of goes on, you realize that maybe not. Maybe, they each have questions and they're not really sure, if they're going to work. But I think at the end of the day, they're ultimately what they both really want is a child. And I think they see it as something that will, since they both really want it, is something that will kind of erase any doubt in their relationship and really hold them together. So apparently they've been trying to find someone, and as they're about to go on this vacation to kind of see where their relationship is, they get the good news. They talk to this mother who is going to give birth soon, and she's gone through the adoption process, and she gives them the news that she has decided that she is okay with them, and she will let them have her child. So as they go on this vacation, they're also celebrating the good news. They're happy. This is what they wanted, and so forth. So as they kind of get there and arrive, there's still the issues among them, and they still kind of talk about it. But there's also a little bit of celebration going on. So on a night there, they're going into this town, and they're supposed to have this dinner. And I was a little confused, in it seemed to be in relation to the woman who was having the child. I was a little confused with, if she kind of set it up or how involved she was, of why they were going there. But it seemed like some people knew that they were in this adoption process. Not, hugely important, but I was a little confused by that, or maybe I just missed it. But anyway, they're headed to this town to have this dinner. And unfortunately, their car gets stuck in the mud. And then this kind of sets off a whole chain of events. So, until that point, until they kind of get stuck in the mud, it's nothing really to do with horror. There's not really any signs of horror. Obviously, you might have some thoughts in your head, if you know it's a horror movie, maybe where this might be going. But nothing, they're not showing you anything really concrete here. To get the ball going. So they get stuck in the mud. It is dark. It is, at night. Obviously, they're in a place where, they don't speak the language. So along comes a person, and, they have, a kind of weird exchange with them. And, they almost end up getting, kidnapped, basically, almost. And then they end up in this town, and in this, knocking at this old lady's door, and, it turns out that this is where they were supposed to be, but they don't really know it. And of course, she speaks zero English, and she starts going on and on and on. And, really the troubles between the couple kind of flare up from time to time, because they're frustrated by, the situation. They're not sure what to do. Sometimes they start arguing amongst themselves. And, so their relationship is always in the background there, and something always comes up, with what's happening. But, that, the situation just stumbles from there. And I guess the best way to say this without giving too much away of what happens next, and I realize that I'm doing the review kind of like the movie, giving you nothing, and then now's the moment. that the horror is going to come, is think of it, and was thinking about this as oh god, now I can't remember their names. Tucker and Dale versus Evil. There we go. Spit it out. Tucker and Dale versus Evil, where you had the two of them and they were just there working on their cabin and going amongst themselves, and here comes some kids or a young group here, and both sides kind of misunderstand what the other's intentions are, and everybody thinks everybody else is the killer, and all kinds of chaos kind of erupts here. So as things unfold in this movie, I kind of it kind of becomes a very similar thing. I'll just I guess the best way to say is bad things are going to start happening, and people are going to die, and a lot of it is because of misunderstanding. So the title just really comes together here is I don't understand you. Because of the language barrier, that's a huge thing here. And because of the situation where the couple's there, they're in town, they don't know what's going on. They're not sure the intentions of the other people here. Things just kind of spiral out of control, and it's basically all because of misunderstanding. At the end of the day, this really didn't have to be a horror movie. Like, they could have just gone on their, wild, wacky adventure. But because of the misunderstanding and then because of what happens, it becomes a horror movie. So, I guess I'll just leave it at that and say, yeah, there are going to people, some death and whatever, and so forth. At the end, I will say that I enjoyed it. Like I said, early on, you're going to have to sit through it, kind of like you've sat through this review, if you're still with me, and listen to a lot of nothing until you get to the horror, until you get to this point where I'm actually telling you why I like the film. So yeah, you're going to have to sit through that, and maybe you're patient, or maybe you're not. Maybe you're just like, screw this, I'm turning this off, and I wouldn't blame you, and I could see it. But there's some, I think maybe because I put it on promote and I was curious, and maybe because I wasn't eager to turn it off. It wasn't painful to watch, and any of that was painful. Sometimes it's painful, and you're just like, that's it, I had it, I gotta turn this off. It was none of that. It was just the lacking of the horror. But I think once they get into this to the mud there, and then get scared when the guy comes, and then it just kind of spirals and gets a little crazy. It's listed here as comedy horror. There's definitely a comedy element of it. Again, maybe not so much early on, definitely when things get out of control. So I think it becomes a very good mix of humor and horror in the back half, when things start going wrong, when they're panicking, when they have to survive, when they're misunderstanding what's happening. Again, I think it gives you a similar element. So if you like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, not to that level, that is a hugely great comedy horror. Love that movie. Nothing to that level. And I'm not saying that this movie is that. I'm just saying, to give you a kind of an example of the kind of horror comedy that's in this movie and the events that's happening. It's similar to that. So you're going to get a good mix, some things to laugh at, some horror here. And I think it just becomes, just kind of fun. The back half of the movie just kind of becomes a fun mix of it. And starts grabbing your attention and so forth, the craziness that happens. And, even to the last moments of kind of what happens, you're there with them, kind of going on this this adventure that's gone crazy. So yeah, I think the movie's very 50-50. You get through the first half, I think you can enjoy the back half. Again, I think, sadly, it doesn't seem like a movie a ton of people will see. But I think, for those of you who may be watching, maybe encouraged to, I'm hopefully encouraging you enough to at least give it a chance. I would say, like, I guess if you're kind of like me and you're not overly concerned with character and character development, even, if at worst, the thing you could do would be to fast forward until you kind of see them get stuck in the mud and then watch the movie from that point on. At worst case, if you're really annoyed by the beginning for whatever reason, I didn't think it was annoying. I just think, again, you get a little anxious when there's no horror and you want horror in some way. But you could even do that and they just be like, okay, I got, there's a couple, they're going on a trip, and then watch, what happens. But, that's the worst case scenario. But, I do encourage you, if you've not seen this and not know too much about it and kind of in the mood for a little bit of comedy horror, it's not going to make you fall out of your seat, horror. But enough, I think it was entertaining enough and to kind of see the situation, the craziness, and to see these two characters, kind of, turn into something that they're not in this crazy situation. But at the end of the day, it is in a weird way what they needed to stay bonded and to stay together, and obviously, in hopes that they still will have a chance to have this baby in the end. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, and I'm glad that I gave it a chance. Which is why sometimes you give it a chance. I know not every time, I've not watched everything that has come across Promote, and I pass on a lot of things. Later times I regret it, or I see it at a later time. But I'm glad I caught this one, and I'm glad I gave it a chance. So with that, I'm going to give this one 3.5 pools of blood. I like I said, I enjoyed it. It gave me enough. It gave me enough. And there, like I said, there is some death. It doesn't, get, too overborne. I think there is still a surprise or two, even though I gave you the general idea of what's happening here. There's one or two surprises, maybe not a huge surprise. Maybe you kind of figured maybe that was going to happen or not. But I think, the back half was fun enough, and I enjoyed it enough so I could overlook, any of that anxiousness at the beginning. So again, that's 3.5 pools of blood out of 5. So with that, horrorscorereviews.blogspot.com is where you can catch all of my reviews, written and video. Certainly tons of video reviews for a while now, so you can like and subscribe and do everything else that everybody wants to do here on YouTube. If not, no worries, it is okay. I thank you for your time regardless. Twitter, Facebook information down below. Feel free to reach out to me there. If you saw this movie and you want to file a complaint with me there, that's fine. And down in the comment section as well. Or if you took a chance and followed what I said and encouraged to watch it, or even fast forward through half the movie, and then watch the back half, and you managed to enjoy that, please let me know. I appreciate it knowing that. So with that, I'll catch you on the next review, horror fans.